All right, guys. So yesterday we messed around with or some of us did, messed around with the Padlet, and I asked you to post your understanding or your guess as to what happens when we say we burn the food. And I want to go back and reiterate something. I read a bunch of the responses, and I want to remind you that like wood and oil and gas, when we say we burn that, we're literally burning it in a fire, and that releases heat and energy. When we say that people get energy by burning, it's a little different. Remember, we said metabolizing food and metabolism. A lot of you used the word metabolism yesterday. And that's correct. That's good. Remember, it's not the same as burning the food like in a fire, but the release of energy is the same. And what I want to make it really clear here, a lot of people miss this in the Padlet, that all we're really doing is once that food gets into your body, like those carbohydrates, those sugars, your cells in your body can actually break it apart. They're literally breaking the bonds in the food, and then that in turn releases energy for animals, humans like us, or all animals to use. Like many of you had mentioned, running, jumping, fighting, escaping predators, swimming, flying, all that takes energy. So I just wanted to remind you of that is where that energy is coming from. We're literally breaking bonds. We're breaking apart the sugars, breaking it apart. And when we start to chop that up, we're not actually burning it in a fire. We say we're burning it, we're metabolizing it. So just wanted to be clear about that. So our focus for today, I'm going to ask that you guys go back into the lab, and you're going to be picking, or you're going to be testing rather, 5 foods. Now, these are the 5 foods back here that I'm going to ask you to test according to the directions. So, I want to show you an example real quickly of what I'm expecting that you do. So I've just quickly grabbed 5 different foods. So remember, you're going to have to test. We've practiced this before. You're going to take your food sample and you have to mass it. We've got to get the temperature of water, and then we're going to burn it in this calorimeter. And remember, up here in the lab notebook is where you're going to record your data. For this. So I'm going to break off a piece of, start with tortilla because that's the first one I've gotten. Break off a little piece. And remember, we need to mass that. So I'm going to pop that on there. I can see the number right here. I'm going to record that underneath tortilla in my initial mass there. So, oops, I already forgot what that was. I can move this around. That's 1609 I'm going to put in there. And again, I'm just trying to do this really quickly to show you how you're going to go about doing the same thing. So we have our mass in here. We recorded that and then advanced to step 3. So each time you test food, the process is going to be the same. Oh, we don't want to listen to this guy. So we have the beginning mass. We're going to plop that up into the crucible, and we fill it with water, because we're going to measure the change in temperature in the water. So we stick our thermometer in. There's our starting temperature. So I'm going to go back into my notebook. My initial temperature of the water is 20.0. So we're good to go with that, guy. So now we can move forward, and now we're going to ignite it with the ignite button. Remember, we now literally burn that food, and the temperature of the water goes up 25.2. So I'm going to go back to my notebook now. Excuse me. And I'm going to put in the final temperature. So all you're going to do is simple steps, and we're going to record in our data table here to have that. So we've recorded the final temperature. We're good to go. Now we just got to go back, and we're going to take that burned food and see what the mass is now. 15.01. I'm going to plop that in here under my final mass. You'll get the hang of this pretty quickly. And you can see it spits out. We know how much the mass changed. It lost about 1 gram. And we know how much the water temperature went up. It went up about 5 degrees. So we've taken care of that. We've done that. So you're going to keep going through and doing that. And what I'm going to ask that you do as part of your exit ticket is, when you are done, once you've done this with all 5 of your foods are going to be different. I'm going to ask that you take a screenshot of that. So remember that when you do that, we've done screenshots before. We have this now in here. We've got our sample done for this, so we know that we're taking our screenshot of that. And I'm going to ask you to take a screenshot of both this guy, and after you have all of your food stuff, you're going to go in here. This looks a little complicated. you're going to go in here and, excuse me, you are going to really simply, we're going to calculate the energy that was actually given off in something called calories. Now, you've probably heard the term calories. Don't worry too much about that. We're going to go over that in detail our next couple of classes. But what we're going to do, calories in our food sample. What they want us to do here, really simple steps. To calculate the number of calories, use the following formula. Now, this looks crazy. It's going to do all the math for us. But what you want to do, the very first step here is you're going to input, notice here, we're filling in this change in water temperature. So if we go back to our data, I can see that for my tortilla, my change in water temperature was 5.20. So I'm going to put in 5.20. And when I hit return, notice it spits out the information for me. It tells me, like, in that food sample, there was 3.12 calories of energy. Yay, great, awesome, fantastic. So when you do that, and now we've got our information in here, we can plug in our calories in our food sample. So our calories in our food sample, it told us right up here, was 3.12. Per hour sample that we had. And then they wanted the change in mass. So notice our change in mass was 1.08. Remember, we're just going to go and we're filling this information back in from our data table. And they're telling us now that here's our information. We can actually put in our calories in our food source and our calories per gram. So my calories per gram of food is 2.89. For us to have in there. So once you've filled in your data table here for this guy, I'm going to ask that I want you to take both a screenshot of this data table and of this bottom data table. And the reason I want you to do that, you're going to copy that to your clipboard. Remember, we know how to take screenshots. Our control button and then that top button above the number 6 key, if you're on a Chromebook, is because I'm going to ask you for the exit ticket. Really simple. You're going to run the test, get your numbers. I'm going to ask you to paste the screenshots of both of your individual data tables in here, and then you're going to respond to this one question. Which one, you're just going to tell me, what did you find? Which one has the most energy, the most calories? We'll talk about that in the next couple of days. And then why do you think that is? So I'm looking for you just to hypothesize as to why you think that has the most. So pretty simple. Again, you're going to test the 5 foods, not these 5 I have here. You're testing these 5 back here. It's in the directions. And you're just going to go and step by step fill in your data table, measuring the change in mass, change in temperature. And then down in here is where you're going to calculate the amount of energy given off. And remember, all you're doing, you're putting in the temperature change in this box right here. It's going to spit back, convert all of your numbers to you so that we know that in our food sample how many calories we had. And if you're confused by the numbers, don't worry, it's doing the math for you. We're going to talk about what these mean. Calories are just a way here to tell us how much energy is in that food. And that's what we're after. We're after energy. All right. So our goal today is to test the 5 foods, fill in the data tables, and again, you're going to paste your 2 screenshots, real simple, and then just write your answer here. Which one did you find had the most energy? But don't forget, there's a Y component. Pretty easy.